fact, it's a quite new discovery for us that the Earth can turn so cold so fast. The problem is, will that happen again to us right now? Or could we accidentally provoke such a catastrophe?
Unless we learn otherwise, it will be prudent to suppose that the next ice age could begin to bite at any time.
In the 1970s, there was a big scare about global cooling. Climate experts were worried that we might be headed towards a new global ice age. Time magazine reported in 1974 that, quote, the atmosphere has been growing gradually cooler for the past 3 decades. The trend shows no indication of reversing. And Newsweek warned ominously that the cooling trend could lead to a drastic decline in food production, resulting in widespread starvation.
According to Old Norse folklore, a summer that isn't summer at all, when the snow fails to melt, will signal the end of the world. Well, the new discoveries suggest that this myth is substantially correct.
Hello, campers. Remember, Monday is Malaria Day. That's right, time to take that big orange pill and get ready for the Ho Chi Minh two-step. Pope Paul VI celebrated Mass in Italian. Whoa, call me crazy, he's in Rome. You know, one day I want to meet him and kiss his ring and have a go. The Mississippi River broke through a protective dike today. What is a protective dike? Is that a large woman standing by the river going, don't go near there? Betty, don't go near there. Get away from the river. Stay away from there. I know we can't use the word dike. You can't even say lesbian. It's women in comfortable shoes. But what's the weather like? You got a window? Open it. Weather out there today is hot and shitty, with continued hot and shitty in the afternoon. Tomorrow, a chance of continued crappy with a pissy weather front coming down from the north.
Good morning. This is Lou Benninger, and you're listening to Live with Lou. If you have no idea how you got here, this address is KMYC 1410 AM, The Patriot. And we also have another address if you don't like that one, and it's 104.3 FM. And we checked and live stream was working. So if you want to listen to us today at kmycradio.com and go to the listen live button, you can listen to it clearer than in some of those areas where you're dwelling. So we're happy you're listening, and we're going to be here, Leon and I. Leon's running all the equipment. We're going to be here till noon today. And if you want to call in, sometimes I'll take a call, sometimes I won't. It's a pro-choice radio station here. And sometimes we need to abort a call if it doesn't fit into where I'm headed, if it isn't convenient. So the number here is 530-742-5555, 530-742-5555. So if I'm talking about something you want to talk about, call right in. If you wait till I move on, sometimes it's not convenient to go back the other direction. Well, I want to send out a big, in bold letters and caps, congratulations to all those men and women, young men and women that pursued and persevered to get their high school diploma. And also those folks at Yuba College, I think there was 800 or something at Yuba College that got a AA degree, which is cool. And I went to the graduation ceremony at the Yuba County Career Preparatory Charter School down there at 11th and E in Marysville. And I was invited by a graduate who I've been following for many years. And I was on the school board for that school for a number of years. And actually, that was the first charter school in the Yuba Sutter Counties area. So you might think, oh, charter schools are all over the place. They are kind of now. But that was the first one. It was one of the first 100 in the Yuba Sutter Counties area. And it was launched by Superintendent of Schools Rick Teagarden at that time. And right now, the superintendent of schools for Yuba County is Francisco Ravelis, who is a breath of fresh air, a really go-get-em guy. And it's interesting that the chairman of the board, or the president of the board of trustees for the Yuba County schools is Ava Teagarden, which is Rick Teagarden, the former superintendent's wife. So that's very nice. But it was a great graduation. They've always had a unique graduation, and The thing that was, I thought, pretty cool is that they are doing their best to have a lot of technical training as opposed to just book learning. So they started out years ago offering an automotive course, which has been very popular, and then also construction. And now this year they added welding, which was a huge deal. So they gave some special awards for welders to these high school students. I thought, way to go. It was very, very cool. So the Yuba County Career Preparatory Charter School just seems to be getting better and better, because I saw it when it was starting, and they moved to the old Ford dealership at 11th and E and remodeled that. And this last summer, they've just kind of remodeled the whole place, and it's been great. So congratulations to them and all the other schools around the area and all the graduates. It's no small thing to graduate from high school. It's not that, to me, it's not that hard. What the problem is, it's real easy to quit. And if a youngster doesn't have some good coaching from parents or mentors, it's just easy to just throw in the towel and say, oh, what's the use? Because you don't see the big picture. So way to go. Really proud of everybody. I saw we played a couple little global cooling, global warming type clips today, and former Vice President Al Gore, who puts his mouth where his money is, but he said in a magazine recently, in an interview called The Interview magazine, that he believed that God told him to get it together and stop global warming. So he's on a mission from God. I thought that was fascinating, because it's interesting, all these guys, these Bloombergs and Obamas and all these people that are pushing all of us sacrificing in places like Africa and third world countries not to develop and not to pump their oil and just stay poor because they don't want to contribute to global warming. But all these people like Al Gore, I think he lives in it's either a 10 or a 20,000 square foot home down there in Tennessee. And they fly on jets, and maybe a lot of times they're the only one on that jet besides the pilot. They don't feel bad about that because they're offsetting their carbon footprint by all the good works they do. Al Gore has actually become a multimillionaire on the green industries. So Al Gore is motivated by God. It's interesting that Al Gore, when he was vice president, they would check his 1040, his tax return each year, and he's one of these liberals that he wants to give through your pocketbook, not through his. So maybe they looked at his giving, he itemized, and all his on the Schedule A on the 1040, if you've ever done your own taxes. And Al would give $100 to $200 out of all the money he gave. What a special guy he is. So there you go for Al Gore, moved on by God. I wanted to talk about this morning, but as we're starting, give you a little history brief, because I just think as I get older and look at these days that some are holidays that we don't know what we're doing. Then we have days that honor particular people like presidents and like Martin Luther King type folks. And it's fascinating to me how little folks know about these people. I was in a sixth grade class once doing a character talk for 20 minutes, and Martin Luther King Day, I think it was the day before or 2 days before, and I asked how many. I wrote a portion of a quote of his on the board, and I asked if anybody knew what it was, and one little Hispanic boy said, I think that's Martin Luther King quote. But that was it out of a large class, about 32 kids. And I thought, that's interesting. We just had the holiday. What a great time, or the Memorial Day where we remember him. Wouldn't it have been good to tell some of the high points of Martin Luther King's life? And But these kids didn't get a clue. It was just another holiday where they took the day off from school. So this past week on June 6th, it was D-Day. And I think for a lot of people, they think, I don't even know what D-Day is. So I want to just give an overview, and I want to tell a story about a guy that you probably never heard of before, but I think he's sort of iconic for the way Americans used to be. So the invasion of Normandy occurred on June 6th, and they called it D-Day. It's just a general military term. But the operation among the military people was called Operation Neptune. And the Normandy landings, or Operation Neptune, were on 1944. And it was the beginning of the turnaround of the war in Asia, and war in Europe against the Nazis. And it was called the Allied Invasion of Normandy. It was the largest seaborne, or some people call it amphibious, invasion in history. The operation began the liberation of German-occupied northwestern Europe from Nazi control and contributed to the Allied victory on what was called then the Western Front. So they needed to plan it according to weather, according to tides, according to the moon, all kinds of stuff. The weather was kind of crummy, but they could not postpone it, so they just had to go for it. And Adolf Hitler had placed a guy named Field Marshal Erwin Rommel. If you ever heard of Rommel, you've probably seen movies where you've seen Rommel and tanks going against George Patton. And they put Rommel in command of German forces and developing fortifications along the Atlantic Wall because they knew that they were going to get invaded. And so the landing of 24,000 American, British, and Canadian airborne troops occurred shortly after midnight. And it didn't go so hot. And if you've seen any movies about that invasion, they came in those kind of big boats that were just like big scooped out steel, where the guys would sit down inside of them, and then when they hit the beach, the front would flop down and they'd run out. You remember those? I'm going to tell you about those in a minute. But the casualties were amazingly high. There was high cliffs that they had to climb up, and casualties were the heaviest on a beach called Omaha Beach. But there were other beaches that were called Utah Beach, Gold Beach, Juno Beach, Sword Beach. Several fortified towns were cleared in house-to-house fightings, but the initial day's objectives were not accomplished. It was difficult, but they stayed the course. German casualties on D-Day have been estimated at between 4,000 and 9,000 men. Allied casualties were at least 10,000, with over 4,400 confirmed dead on just that one day. Pretty interesting. And so each year we remember or commemorate June 6th, because of June 6, 1944, just after midnight when the invasion began. Now, there's a fellow that Dwight D. Eisenhower, who was the leader of the Allied forces, considers the key to winning World War II. It's amazing that one guy, that Dwight D. Eisenhower, who was a great leader, who that person was and what he did. His name was Andrew Jackson Higgins. And he built boats. He built those boats that you see coming up on shore, dumping out all those troops. He built those. And he built them in New Orleans. And they were Higgins boats. And Higgins was an ass-kicking American. And I'm going to tell you about him because when I tell you about him, I want you to think about the type of men that we have in America today. People like sissies like Paul Ryan and McConnell and James Comey and Eric Holder, and Barack Obama, just wusses, right? At Higgins' New Orleans plant where they built ships, he had a sign hung on the door outside of his plant. Anybody caught stealing tools out of this shipyard won't get fired. He'll go to the hospital. I like that. Whatever Higgins did, he did it a lot. He had a really filthy mouth. And it was really loud, and there was a lot of filthy profanity always blasting out of his mouth whenever he talked. He also loved to drink Old Taylor bourbon, though he say he curtailed his intake by limiting his sips to a specific location. In other words, he wouldn't drink everywhere on the yard, only certain spots. And he told Life magazine, it's a magazine that's now extinct, I think, but it was very popular when I was growing up, Life and Look. Higgins said, "I only drink while I'm working." My dad drank while he wasn't working, so that's a thought. The fact of what Higgins was able to accomplish is amazing. He provided U.S. forces with the means to swiftly attack beaches. Despite all his personal shortcomings, is a testament to his relentless talent, perseverance, and creativity as an entrepreneur. Raymond Moley, who was a former advisor to Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who was the president at the time of the war, said, "It is Higgins himself who takes your breath away." Higgins is an authentic master builder with the kind of willpower, brains, drive, and daring that characterized the American empire buildings of an earlier generation. This guy was a real man. He didn't have to you didn't have to guess. You ever see a person coming down the street and you say, is that a man or a woman? That's how I think about Paul Ryan and McConnell and all these sissies that are trying to run this country. Higgins was not native to the South. Despite his love of bourbon, he grew up in Nebraska, where at various ages he was expelled from school for fighting. Higgins' temperament improved around boats. He built his first vessel when he was 12. It was so large that a wall had to be torn down to get it out of the house. He built it in his own house that he was being raised in. He moved south in his 20s, worked in the lumber industry. He hadn't thought much about boats until a tract of timber was out in the shallow waters of a lake, and it required him to build a special vessel so he could remove the wood. Higgins signed up for a correspondence course in naval architecture, shifting his work from timber to boats. In the late 30s, he owned a shipyard in New Orleans. By then, he had developed a special shallow craft boat, which had become popular with loggers and oil drillers. They were called tunnel stern boats, and the cool thing was that the propeller and all the apparatus underneath were tucked up into it wasn't hanging below the boat where it could get hung up on stuff, where it was tucked up where it was flat underneath there. So it was magic, because the hull incorporated a recessed tunnel. That's why they call it tunnel stern boats. The hull incorporated a recessed tunnel used to protect the propeller, etc. So these were perfect for dumping troops on beaches. He called it the Eureka boat. The war brought interest by U.S. forces in similar style vessels. The Marines settled on the Higgins boat and transforming what had been a 50-employee company into one of the world's largest manufacturers. To to put Higgins' accomplishment in perspective, Doug Brinkley, a historian, wrote in 2000 article for American Heritage. He said by 1943, September, 12,964 of the Navy's 14,072 vessels had been designed by Higgins Industries. Put another way, 92% of the U.S. Navy was called the Higgins Navy. It's said that though Eisenhower and even Hitler acknowledged the importance of the Higgins boat, military leaders came to call it the bridge to the beach. Its builders went mostly unmentioned in the histories of war. Have you ever heard of Higgins? I had never heard of Higgins until I wanted to do this explanation about D-Day. 17 years ago, a World War II museum opened in New Orleans and recognized Higgins' life, displaying a reproduction of the boat. If you go to New Orleans, go to that museum and check out one of those boats. But there has never been a biography written about Andrew Jackson Higgins and the boats that won World War II. Or there's just been one. And that's written by a guy named Jerry Strahan, Strahan. If you want to check that out and read an amazing book about a real man, a real American, not a sissy. It says, without Higgins' uniquely designed craft, there could not have been a mass landing of troops and material on European shores or the beaches of the Pacific Islands, at least not without a tremendously high rate of Allied casualties. He died in 1952. Roosevelt said, "You're the only man I've ever met who has done all the talking." Anyway, amazing guy. The Higgins boat. In other words, the Navy was built by Higgins and his people in New Orleans.
40 summers have passed since the battle that you fought here. You were young the day you took these cliffs. Some of you were hardly more than boys with the deepest joys of life before you. Yet you risked everything here. Why? Why did you do it? We look at you and somehow we know the answer. It was faith and belief. It was loyalty and love. It was the deep knowledge, and pray God we have not lost it, that there is a profound moral difference between the use of force for liberation and the use of force for conquest. Something else helped the men of D-Day. Their rock-hard belief that Providence would have a great hand in the events that would unfold here, that God was an ally in this great cause. These are the things that impelled them. These are the things that shaped the unity of the Allies. Today, as 40 years ago, our armies are here for only one purpose: to protect and defend democracy. We in America have learned bitter lessons from 2 world wars. It is better to be here ready to protect the peace than to take blind shelter across the sea, rushing to respond only after freedom is lost. Here in this place, where the West held together, let us make a vow to our dead. Let us show them by our actions that we understand what they died for. Let us continue to stand for the ideals for which they lived and died. Thank you very much, and God bless you all.
All right, welcome back. This is Lou Benninger. You're listening to Live with Lou. And we're going to have an interview here in just a second. I want to just give a little introduction. For years in this country, we've had an opportunity of citizens to participate in the directions of this country by voting. And when I started voting, we just all worked with paper ballots. And then as technology came along, we began to use electronic machines. And there are some people discussing and trying around the United States different ways to get more people involved. and more people voting. And so today we're going to have a chat with Donna Johnston, who is the county clerk of Sutter. And Donna is rolling out the possibility of a new voting system as a trial in Sutter County. Donna, are you there?
I am here. Good morning, Lou.
Thank you so much for coming on the air. And as we were, obviously, for all those listening, Donna and I have been talking about this week. And so this is called the Voter Choice Act, right?
Yes, it is.
And so there were 14 counties chosen of the 58 counties to run a trial or a test run of this, and I guess maybe 10 are going to go forward with it, and you're going to present this Tuesday to the Board of Supervisors, right?
Yes, I am.
And that is that going to be to see if they want to do it?
Yes. What I'm looking for is community feedback to help me decide what we should do going forward. Should we try this new pilot project or not?
Okay, so this is Senate Bill 450. You can look it up on the internet out there. You can Google it, Senate Bill 450. They got a nice write-up on the internet. And if you want to see Donna's presentation, you can go to the meeting on Tuesday. You'll have to help us with the time of that, Donna. But why don't you just give us an overview of how we've been voting and how this is going to change it and maybe make it better.
All right. Thank you, Lou, and thank you for the opportunity to talk to you this morning.
Sure.
And to your audience. So right now, a traditional polling place is open on Election Day. Voters can get their vote-by-mail ballot if they request one up to 29 days before an election, but the polling place scenario happens only on Election Day. Under this new legislation, it would create vote centers. So vote centers would be open throughout the county anywhere from 3 days before the election up to 10 days before the election for a couple of those. So Sutter County would have 2 of those if we go forward with this project. We would have 2 vote centers that would be open, including Saturday and Sunday, to give voters an opportunity to come in and vote earlier.
Okay, so that would be like the traditional style where you drop in and vote there?
Yes, every voter would get a vote-by-mail ballot. So we have about 45,000 registered voters right now. Currently, we've got about 23% of those folks going that are eligible to go to the polls on Election Day. So this would give everybody a vote-by-mail ballot, and then they would have the opportunity to drop that vote-by-mail ballot off at a vote center if they would like, or if they'd like to turn that ballot in to vote on a machine, they can do that. Or if they wanted to just to have a little more of that traditional polling place experience, come on in, say hello and to the poll workers and get that coveted I voted sticker.
Yeah, okay. So the number you just gave threw me a little bit. You said 45,000. Those are people that could register, right? But they don't all register. Is that correct? Or are they registered?
That is our current registration in Sutter County, just under 45,000.
And then you said that about 20-some% actually come to the polls?
Oh, no, only about 23% of the voters of that 45,000 actually are polling place voters. We have 76% that currently vote by mail now.
Okay, so we're all kind of turning into vote by mail folks already. So what one change that I thought was fascinating is that instead of like the concept of going somewhere and getting on a machine or getting a card or getting paperwork or whatever, you're going to send everybody that's registered to vote a ballot, not just a ballot, a sample ballot, but the ballot, right?
Correct. Mm-hmm.
And then they can
it's an actual live ballot.
And they can do what they want with it, right? I mean, could they mail it in or could they hand deliver it? They're going to have drop-off spots, correct?
Yes, they could mail it in to us. They could drop it off at a drop-off spot. Right now, we've been looking and canvassing the neighborhoods and the entire county to look for those vote center locations.
Uh-huh.
And right now, our plan would be, if we roll this out, to have the elections office on Veterans Memorial Circle open for that 10-day period prior to election, and then the Live Oak location up in Live Oak. So our two major cities will have vote centers 10 days out, and then we'll expand that and add 3 more vote centers, one down in South County, East Nicholas, Pleasant Grove area, one in the Sutter area, and then another one we're still trying to determine. That's our plan, should we go forward with this, to have those vote centers peppered throughout the county. And then you also have the opportunity to drop your ballot off at a drop-off box. We would be adding boxes, secured boxes throughout the county as well, so give the voters a chance to drop it off at that box if they would like to save a stamp.
So kind of like at the old style mail receptacle in a neighborhood or something.
Yes.
That kind of thing, secured box. Okay.
Yes.
So let's talk about registration. Let's talk about the way it used to be and the way this would open it up a little different.
Oh, okay.
Registering to vote. That also changes a little bit, doesn't it?
Yes, this changes under this model as well. In 2017, same-day registration came to California.
In January, okay.
In January. But under the current scenario, under a traditional polling place scenario, you can only do that in the elections office on election day. Okay. Under a vote center model, if somebody wanted to register and vote for that election, they could come into a vote center where they could register to vote and be given a ballot at that point in time.
I wonder whether people even caught that change. In 2016, you had to register so many days before the election, correct?
You did. You had to register 15 days before. And we had about 200 folks that had registered between that cutoff period and election day.
Okay.
So they could not vote in that particular election. But
they missed it. They missed
it.
Okay, they missed the window. I got it.
Right, but we still got them in for future elections.
Right. So then on January 1, 2017, it changed.
Yes.
And so now the day of the election, if I moved to Sutter County and I thought, oh, I need to register over here, I could come right down to your office as of January 1, 2017, and I could register on the day of the election and then go over and vote, or vote there with you, right?
Correct.
Okay, so now this even changes. If we do this voter model that Bill 450 is authorizing, then I could actually register at one of these vote centers on the day of the election if I was not a registered voter, correct?
Yes, you could. Okay. And then you would be given a ballot.
Okay. Now, we talked the other day about where there's, we talked about provisional ballots, where there's a problem with a ballot, where a person, how would you prevent somebody voting twice?
Well, under a vote center model, we would have an electronic, we would be wirelessly connected to our registration system. So our registration system, we could see the registration system to know if you had already turned your ballot in.
Okay.
So at that point, if you would come into a vote center, we could look right back to the live system, find out you had already voted.
Okay. So we talked about you having technology at the vote centers. In other words, you'll have personnel there, possibly paid personnel, right? Is that what you're thinking, if the supervisors approve it?
Yes, it'll be paid poll workers and people that are familiar with our registration system, obviously. So we've got a lot of folks that we bring in during an election normally.
Yes.
That are very well versed in the election process and the registration system.
So you would have technology there that would clear up any confusion, that it's real-time technology connected to your central data bank, right? If I could say it that way.
Yes, and the Secretary of State right now is currently writing the security regulations for the wireless systems that we'll need to adhere to. So
I have your PowerPoint here I'm looking at. You're going to present this on Tuesday. Do you remember the time of the board meeting?
Yes, the board meeting starts at 3 o'clock.
So for those people that want to watch this entire presentation and have input into that, they could come to the board meeting, right? And they could probably just stand up and say something. But you have some other ways that you're actually soliciting people's input, aren't you, at this time? Is that the reason we're talking about this now? I mean, the state's going to go do this, right? Do we have a choice whether we want to do it or not?
Sutter County has a choice. All of the pilot counties have a choice as to whether or not they want to try this pilot project. So I'm soliciting community feedback because I want to know what the community thinks about this new vote center model and whether or not the citizens want to try this model. So I'm launching a email address, and the email address is called My 2 Cents at the county email address. So it's MY, the number 2, so MY2 CENTS at co.sutter.ca.us. Because we really want to know what the community thinks about this.
Right. So, for instance, if they say, "Oh, we think we need more vote centers," or "We don't want a vote center up there," but you're right now just beginning to roll this out by going to the newspaper in all the ways that we would that's why we're talking today, is let everybody know, hey, there's a change coming. It has some potential for benefiting people that have a tough time getting to the polls, right? Because we're going. I liked what you sent me, where you had this comparison where on the left it says now 1 voter, 1 day, 1 location, 1 device. And then under SB 450, it's all voters, 10 days, up to 5 locations, all devices. So it's a nice comparison to kind of capture all these changes, right?
Yes, it is, and we'll have that up on the Sutter County website. We have plans to put it out on our Facebook page as well with the PowerPoint, and try to get the word out as much as possible. We'll be trying to hit some events. We'll be at the summer stroll handing out this little handout and so forth. So we really want to find out what the community thinks.
It's interesting, how we kind of get stuck in our ways. And I was thinking about, after we talked, how you get used to going to these polling places. Somebody at one time came up with that idea, right? And so we all kind of, if you registered to vote when you were back in my day, it's 21, now it's 18. You just kind of accepted that, oh, my voting spot is at the local church down on the corner, or at the welfare office or something. And that's where you kind of went, and you were kind of restricted if you were busy and you were late getting into town, and it was almost 7 o'clock at the end of the, it was like pressure if life was gobbling you up. So this really offers a number of days prior to the end date of the election to put in your ballot, right? A lot of flexibility.
It does, and on top of that, if, say, for instance, you live in Meridian, but you worked in Yuba City and wanted to come in to vote, we would have your ballot now at a vote center that is specific to you. In the past, you'd have to go to your particular polling place to get your ballot, and now we'll have all ballot types at all the vote centers, so we've got even that additional level of flexibility.
So in other words, I can vote at any of your spots, no matter where I am. As soon as I decide I got a half hour, I can do this, I could run in and drop off my ballot or grab a ballot or something, right?
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But the nice thing is that I thought was that everybody will get a ballot in their hand should they choose to vote, right? I mean, they could say, I'm not going to vote, but I mean, they could go over the ballot like right now, we all get sample ballots. Would you still send out a sample ballot, for instance, in this case?
Well, we would send out the instructions and everything, but you would get a live ballot. But if you did make a mistake on that ballot, you can certainly pop into a vote center and get a new one issued to you. So
when you say live, you mean just a paper ballot? You'd get the packet, the envelope. Correct. With the ballot in it. And so say you botch it, you could just, the convenience, I always wonder, what if I botch it, right? Are they going to believe me? So in this case, you just go into a vote center, you turn in that, they give you another one, right? Simple?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So how did this get started? Was this Alex Padilla, the Secretary of State? I think I see his name on it. Was there other people involved in this, or do you recall?
He is the one who started this, really wanted to take a look at increasing voter turnout.
Right.
Voter turnout is, even in Sutter County, vote-by-mail voters are a 55% turnout, generally speaking, and the people who go to the polls are anywhere from less than 10% to up to 20% in the last November election.
Yeah.
So he was hoping to encourage voter turnout. So they went to him and a number of officials throughout the state, elected officials throughout the state, went to Colorado to look at their model and adopted that model to bring back to California.
Have you talked to other county clerks? What are the county clerk? I know you have an association of the 58 counties probably. Is there a feeling of the county clerks at this point about it? Do they kind of like it? Or I know you're trying to stay impartial just to say, hey, I'll do whatever y'all want. But what's the sense out there?
Well, there's different thoughts and feelings depending on the counties. We have a large group that meets once a month with the Secretary of State's office for the pilot counties. I started a smaller county phone call that we do once a month to get the smaller county perspective. Some of us are excited about it. Some of us are not as excited about it. But it really boils down to the equipment needs that they have. Some of them need to purchase new equipment. We do not need to purchase new equipment to try this.
Yeah.
So it makes it a little bit easier for us to do it. We won't have to extend a lot of capital outlay to do this.
Okay, so I hadn't thought that through. So you take the paper ballot and then you run it through something that reads it, right? Is that how it works?
Yes, we have 2 high-capacity scanners that read the ballots.
Wow. Now, is Nevada County, I notice, is on the list of trial folks. Is that
Yes.
still true? They're still on board? Because they could choose to step out. I know a couple counties that said on your documents have decided to pass. So have you been? Are they one of the ones you've been having a discussion with?
Yes, they are. Yes, they are. And Nevada County has decided that they are going forward with this at this point.
Okay.
And so they are looking at doing this. Sacramento County Board of Supervisors, because their elected official, their person is not elected, their registrar is an appointed person.
Oh.
The decision lies with the Board of Supervisors. So the Board of Supervisors in Sacramento County approved it just this last week.
Okay. Well, we have a lot of listeners up in Nevada County, so this is helpful to them if they haven't heard this. Maybe they've already heard the whole story up there, but so that's great. Are there other things? The amazing thing to me, when we talked the other day, when you gave me the statistic of the number of people that vote at the polls, that could vote at the polls, that aren't absentee, of all those people that were registered and are coming to the polls, in some cases only 8% actually went, right?
Yes. Back in the last gubernatorial in June of 2014, we only had an 8% turnout at the polls.
That's incredibly low. I was shocked at that. So, my take on it, I thought, hey, if we could get people more involved, that would be great. It
definitely would.
Yeah. I hadn't thought about the equipment aspect, and that's that. Some of these places then don't have that scan equipment. They use something different, huh? Some of these counties.
Yes, they have older equipment. So, for instance, Shasta County is a county that would require new equipment, and unfortunately, they're not in a position to purchase new equipment, so they have opted out of this pilot project.
Yeah, I noticed that. They were chosen and then opted out. So that's fine for the pilot project, but this is it's law, right? This is state law. So are they saying to some counties, you don't have to do it this way? We'll have 2 different systems? What are they saying at the state level?
Well, currently the pilot project is not mandatory for the 14 counties.
Right.
It's permissive in 2020 for the other counties, the rest of the 58 counties. It's permissive at this point. There's been some discussion as to whether or not that may change and become mandatory if the pilot project is highly successful. But that would take a legislation change at this point because the legislation is not mandatory for 2020.
For 2020?
For the other counties, yes, it's not. So,
okay, so that is so in other words, for the trial counties, it will be, that's what we'll do. By 2020, we'll switch over, right? Is that what you're saying?
No, we don't have to switch over the way that the legislation is currently written. So it's never going to be mandatory the way legislation is written right now today.
Yep.
However, there is talk about that possibly changing.
So some counties like Sutter, if everybody's on board on this, Sutter County is going to do this. And if Sutter County decides we're going to do this, how soon will we go to this system?
It will be for this upcoming election, the gubernatorial in June of 18.
Wow, that's a pretty fast. So we'll be doing it that way, but so will it, since it's not a mandatory legislation, so you could have a situation where 35 counties are doing it and the rest are doing the old way, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Well, we're coming to the end of our half hour. You have any other comments we missed? Any aspects we missed we should know about, or you want to restate anything like your email address or the supervisor time and date?
Oh, okay. Yes. Thank you. The Board of Supervisors meeting is this coming Tuesday at 3 o'clock on 2nd Street at the Hall of Records building. And the email address that we've launched is called my2cents@co.sutter.ca.us. And that's my, the number 2, and CENTS. You can also give us a call, 530-822-7122, and give us your thoughts or ask us your questions. And the one thing I've heard from a few folks is, gosh, will you still need poll workers? Heck yes, we will still need poll workers because we've got to get them out to those vote centers.
Right. Yeah. Sounds interesting to me. Well, thank you so much, Donna, and if we can help you in the future, let us know.
All right. Thank you very much, Lou.
All right. Have a good day. All right, so that was Donna Johnston. She's the Sutter County Clerk, and we've been talking about SB 450, which is new legislation to look at making it a lot easier for folks to vote, a lot easier for people to register to vote. Certainly not going to make it easier to cheat, but it's, they have ways to monitor whether people are voting twice or finagling the system, but it just makes it easier, more convenient to vote. It's actually moving us into the 21st century in some ways and making it really convenient in our type of lifestyle to connect. So I would encourage you, if you have strong feelings about this, to communicate. Donna Johnston, in my discussions with her, was very careful not to be strongly opinionated as a county clerk. This is her business. She's a veteran along with Terry Hansen over in Yuba County. Yuba County is not one of the model counties. It wasn't up to them. The legislature chose 14 counties, and I believe 3 of the counties declined, and probably for reasons that Donna stated, that there was they weren't going to be able to switch over right now because they didn't have the money to buy scanning equipment that was needed that Sutter County already has. So give them a shout out at Sutter County, or go to the meeting if you want to. If it's a very interesting PowerPoint, we kind of covered it today, but if you want to hear it again, and you can, I don't know whether it's on their Sutter County website right yet, but they'll have it up there, and you can look at what I'm looking at, which is a comparison on how we do it right now. One vote, one day, one voter, one day, one location, one device, and this will go to all voters, 10 days, up to 5 locations, all devices. We'll be right back.
An absolutely blistering report tonight out saying the Obama administration in general, and former Attorney General Eric Holder in particular, repeatedly lied to the family of a slain Border Patrol officer about the weapons used in his death and stonewalled efforts to get at the truth. Correspondent William Lajeunesse tonight on Operation Fast and Furious.
My only goal was to make sure he was laid to rest with honors. That honor has been insulted by cover-ups and deception by the very people he served.
Border Patrol agent Brian Terry died in December 2010, killed by guns tied to an Obama administration plan that armed Mexicans, a scandal officials tried to hide by wrongly claiming executive privilege.
The department's belated admission that those 64,000 pages were not privileged puts the gold seal of authenticity on the House's bipartisan vote to hold the Attorney General in contempt.
Emails contained in the House Oversight Committee's report show top officials knew the ATF sent guns to Mexico even before Terry's death. It's a tricky case given the number of guns that have walked, said a Deputy Attorney General. A colleague replied, it is not going to be any big surprise a bunch of U.S. guns are being used in Mexico, so I'm not sure how much grief we get for guns walking. Months later, 2 of those guns were used against Agent Terry, a fact denied to Congress and Terry's family.
Only one possible motivation remains for all of those involved who have covered up Fast and Furious. That is to conceal their own shame and disgrace.
Even the Border Patrol, which sent Terry's team into the desert, didn't know about the operation.
I believe that if Brian Terry and his team had known this information, chances are Brian would be alive today.
The report claims the administration tried to stop the investigation by discrediting whistleblower John Dodson.
I was lied about, disparaged, publicly attacked, ridiculed, libeled. I've been transferred 11 times, denied promotion, ostracized, barred from government workplaces, and banned from public buildings.
Lawmakers noted no one from the ATF or Justice Department was fired or seriously disciplined for the cover-up. Brett?
William, thank you.
All right, welcome back. This last half hour, we were talking to Sutter County Clerk Donna Johnston, who, among many other responsibilities, is in charge of assuring that people are able to vote and vote honestly, and that there's confidence in the voting system. And so she was talking about Senate Bill 450, which has passed and been signed by the governor, and now is being tested. And they picked 14 counties of the 58 California counties to give an opportunity for a test run. And those counties are Calaveras, Inyo, Madera, Napa, Nevada, which she said already approved this to go forward there. Orange County, Sacramento, who already approved it, she said. San Luis Obispo, San Mateo. And then these 3 counties declined: Santa Clara, Shasta, and Sierra. And then Sutter and Tuolumne are still. So we have 11 of the 14. And there was a caller right on the heels of her hanging up that asked about how to prevent voter fraud. And I wrote an article. In fact, let's see. It was, let me see if I can pull up the date. It's May 3rd, I think. Let me see if I can get this. No, I don't think it's May 3rd. Anyway, I think it's May 31st. And I wrote it regarding, the question was, can we have confidence in the voter system? Because I'd got a card from the Yuba County county clerk, and they again, they take care of elections as well, same in every county. And so I wrote an article in the May 31st edition of the Territorial Dispatch, which you can view online at territorialdispatch.biz. And the question is, the title of the article is "The Voting System Trustworthy?" And I had a great talk a couple of weeks ago. It's kind of coincidence, and now I've talked to both county clerks in Yuba and Sutter counties. Been very interesting. Both of these clerks have been in office many years. They're veterans at what they do, and they have a lot of respect in our community. So Terry Hansen from Yuba County was telling me how because I had this question the same way the caller did. Well, how's this all going to work with voter fraud? You know, really anything you do in life, like we have tens of, maybe hundreds of thousands of laws on the books. So what do you do when people violate the law? Well, you catch them and you enforce the law, you prosecute them, right? So people have a way of trying to, for some reason, violate the law or vote more than once or vote when they shouldn't be voting, vote for someone that's dead or whatever. And I had a long discussion with Terry Hansen about those things privately. We didn't have it on the air, but I wrote an article about that. And we now have for the first time in history, recently, they got a system, electronic database going in California called VoteCal. And VoteCal is linked with HAVA, which is a federal vote system. And those systems track people that are voting, whether they move from one county to another and register. Say if I moved from Yuba to Sutter County and registered over there with Donna Johnston, then that system would know to delete me out of the Yuba County vote bank. And same if I moved from the state of California and moved over to Washoe County, Nevada, where Reno is, and moved there, and I registered to vote in Washoe, then the HAVA system would pick up the fact that I have moved over there and let the county of Yuba know that I've left. There's other ways to catch it, and that is where if they mail an absentee ballot to me, which is how I vote, and I voted that way for over 2 decades, I think, more than that maybe. So they automatically, they don't ask me, do I want one? They know I want one, so they send it to me. So if I have moved and that ballot goes back to the clerk, they know there's something wrong, and so then they would investigate that if they, for instance, weren't notified by VoteCal or HAVA. So for the first time within the last couple of years, we have this VoteCal system, which they'd been working on for years, which now links all these systems. So when they talk about when they register you to vote, it isn't just putting your name on a piece of paper and they keep it in a binder. It's actually going into an electronic database where they register you under a certain name in a certain way. So that's how it's kind of working. Will anybody ever try to fraudulently vote? Well, certainly they will, because we have a devious nature about us. The question is there means to catch that and then follow up on it and negate or scratch a vote if people have voted once, twice, 3 times, 4 times. A number of years ago, and I don't know whether I wrote about this in the paper or not, but there was a situation where in Marysville City Council, a gentleman ran for city council, and his campaign manager was aggressive, and the campaign manager ran a pool hall in Marysville. And so all of a sudden, numerous new registrations were coming out of a commercial establishment as a residence. In other words, when you register to vote, you're supposed to give your residence, not your business address. So that a red flag went off, and that's back before there were electronics, and they noticed that there were these numerous registrants at the same address, and they busted them. And I don't know that it was nefarious. They were registering people. They were just using that address, and instead of, maybe they were just using the wrong address. So instead of a residence address. So there's ways to catch people. I just read in the paper, I didn't look at the article this week, I don't know if it was on Drudge Report or whatever, but some people were getting arrested for a voter fraud system. So, no matter what system we have, there will always be people that are seedy types that are going to try to do something stupid. Well, I wanted to this Comey, I don't know whether you've been following this Comey hearing, but what a disappointing mess this Comey situation is. And I'm sure I don't know how many liberals listen to this program, but sometimes people just will follow anybody over a cliff. But Mr. Comey is a liar, and he's a lousy FBI director. And here's some of the things that they found in his testimony. I don't know whether you got to listen to it or not. I didn't, but this summary was made that I thought was interesting. 10 things that they learned from the Comey testimony. 1, Trump was never under investigation. It was an entire fraudulent, fake news thing that the Democrats have been trying to destroy. They couldn't beat Trump, so they've tried to destroy his administration. So they've just kept it in an upheaval of the Russians and Trump's under investigation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And they just keep saying it no matter whether there's any evidence or not. So Trump was never under investigation. Number 2, Trump did not obstruct justice. In fact, I just heard where Trump's willing to take the stand and under oath answer questions. Pretty bold. Number 3, Trump did not collude with Russia. Number 4, Russia did not alter the election outcome. Number 5, Comey leaked his own memo. Can you imagine the FBI, who I've regarded as people of integrity as an organization? And in fact, I know people have worked for the FBI and actually work currently for the FBI. They're good people. They're patriots. And the director of the FBI leaks his own memo through a college professor to the New York Times. Loretta Lynch, the attorney general that took Eric Holder's spot, pressured Comey to cover for Hillary Clinton. How disgusting is she? There was number 7, ample evidence to put Hillary in jail, but Comey chose not to pursue it and not to prosecute her. Loretta Lynch, Mr. Comey, and a number of other of these characters all worked for the same attorney firm in Washington, D.C. for years together. They're all buddies in another life. Number 8, CNN and other fake news outlets have been lying and making things up the entire time. CNN and these other news outlets knew all along, but it's been a whole kabuki dance. It's been people acting the part that they're all serious and there's got to be something out there, and they've just been doing a total fraudulent, fake, baloney humbug the whole time. But they've kept everything stirred up to try to keep them from getting anything done as a president and a new administration. Number 9, the Democrat Party no longer has the ability to scream Russia every time Trump tries to do something. But you know what's going to happen? They are going to scream Russia, and they will scream Russia until a Republican is removed from office. Number 10, the Russia story is essentially dead, except for the people that don't want it to be dead, and they'll just keep talking about it under conspiracy theories until we pass from this earth. Any Democrats who continue to push it will look foolish and insane to the American people. Well, that's maybe wishful thinking. I was just thinking about the FBI, and I always think of J. Edgar Hoover. Now, it's amazing when you look at the history of the FBI. J. Edgar Hoover served for 36 years. Now they have a 10-year term and you're out. And part of that was to eliminate the idea of somebody being in there for 36 years and having all the goods on all these people and trying to use politics against them. So, but after J. Edgar Hoover, his term was ended. He died of a heart attack on May 2nd, 1972. There was a fill-in, an acting director who served 1 day, Clyde Tolson, and then the next person, Patrick Gray, served for 359 days, and these are under Richard Nixon. And then William Ruckelshaus served for 70 days. Pretty short terms, right? We had 1 day, 359 days, and 70 days. That's 3 guys when the previous guy was there 36 years. So finally, Clarence M. Kelly took over in July 73 and served for 4 years. And he served under Nixon, Ford, and Carter. And then James Adams took over, and he was the associate director, and he was an acting director then with Kelly's departure. He served only 8 days until they picked William Webster, and now we're getting into more modern, closer to my time. Well, I remember William Webster. He served 9 years, 91 days under Jimmy Carter and Ronald Reagan. And then it went to a guy named John Otto, who I totally missed. He was an acting director for 160 days. And then William Sessions, not Jeff Sessions, but William Sessions, served 5 years and almost 6 years. And he was dismissed, interestingly enough. Isn't that interesting that Bill Clinton, when he took over, like Sessions served under Reagan and Bush, H.W. Bush, and then Clinton, but Clinton dismissed him. And a guy named Floyd Clark took over for 44 days. And then, if you'll remember, a guy named Louis Freeh. Freeh. I remember when Louis took over, and I remember seeing him provide testimony before the Senate subcommittees. And so he served under Bill Clinton, and when George Bush came along, George just kept Louis free. And then, so Louis was there 7 years, almost 8 years. And then Thomas Pickard filled in for 71 days. And then Robert Mueller, who was right now the independent investigator that's now been picked to investigate all kinds of nefarious stuff that really didn't happen. Mueller came in and served 12 years under George Bush. And then he continued on with Barack Obama. And then he left. And James Comey came in and served 3 years, 247 days, and was dismissed by Donald Trump. Now, if you think, oh, I hate Trump, if you're a liberal, and he said he dismissed James Comey, and the reason he dismissed Comey is he had the goods on him. James Comey had no goods on Trump, and he wasn't the first guy to be dismissed. It was Bill Clinton who fired the first guy that was fired. The rest of them just left of their own free will or dropped dead in office. So get over that. So Andrew McCabe, after Comey was fired the other day, Comey served 3 years, 247 days. McCabe served 31 days so far. And we'll see how long he's going to be there. But one nominee, there's a number of people being hashed about. Christopher Wray, W-R-A-Y, is being talked about. So anyway, that's maybe that's more than you want to know about the FBI director, but I think you can get confused when you don't know the facts. And so many times we think we know something, or you pay attention to the media, which is full of baloney, and you think, oh, well, they did this and they did that. You come to all kinds of conclusions, and you don't know what you're talking about. So, so there you have it on that. I want to talk also. Let's see, where are we? Okay, we got few minutes here. I was listening to Andy, and I don't have this article, but I noticed a little deal on the internet where it says free food is going to be provided by the school district for kids during the summer, as if there isn't enough food around town. And I totally agree with they had a discussion before this show, Andy Vasquez and Matt, his co-host, had a discussion on kids not having enough to eat, and Andy brought up the fact that if anybody, of course he was sort of being rhetorical, but I've not read an article. I think if there was a kid that starved to death in the United States, Andy was bringing up, has anybody ever starved to death out there, or known of anybody that's been starving, or a kid that was malnourished? I mean, certainly kids get removed from parents who neglect them, but generally kids are not totally malnourished, because there's just not a lot of food around, or not enough food around. But I find it fascinating that the school districts assume parents don't have enough wherewithal to take care of their kids with all, I think last week we talked about 127 federal poverty programs, and then you add on top of that state and local poverty programs, state, county, and city programs. And still you have school districts that think they need to go out and feed people. Pretty interesting. All right. I want to mention to you, since we just had a couple of minutes and I don't want to start into something and then have to break it, I want to mention to you that I have been writing the president. And it's the first, I've actually wrote President Clinton one time about an immigration matter that I was trying to get some help with. But I never wrote the president to give him an attaboy or I don't like you, I don't like what you did there. I don't remember ever doing that, but I have been recently. And I want to tell you how I do it, because it's very easy to do if you have a computer. If you go to White House, one word, whitehouse.gov, G-O-V, and then you just go up to the top where it says to contact them, or you want to leave a message. It's really a small little phrase, and you just click on that. Then you can, it has an email email boxes to put in your name, address, phone number, and then a box to just say what you want to say. And then hit the send button. You can do it in 30 seconds, 45 seconds once you've done it once. It's very easy, and you can comment on anything you see on the news, whatever you want. It's just a very, very simple way. And, of course, you give your address, so if they may, if they want, they can respond back. The other thing I wanted to say, since we just have a couple minutes, is we've been trying to get this program live stream or recorded and put on the website here at KNYC, but they don't seem to be able to do it. So Chris Starkey with One Eye Blind Media has put it on his site. So you can watch it anytime during the week. The show usually gets up on Wednesday. This show will be up by Wednesday. And you can go to YouTube. Just click on YouTube, and in the box where you want to go on YouTube, you just type in One Eye, not one-eyed, One Eye Blind Media, all separate words, and it'll then click go there. Just say go there. And then when you get to there and his page on YouTube, then hit or click on playlists. So One Eye Blind Media, and then playlists, and then you'll see a box that says Live with Lou. And all my Live with Lou programs for the last several weeks will be right there, and you can click on whatever week you want to listen to, and you can listen to it at your convenience or portions of it. So it's a really great service that Chris is volunteering for us, since we can't get it on the website here. So just go to YouTube, and then in the box, just put One Eye, ONEIEYE, Blind Media, One Eye Blind Media, all 4 words separated by a space, and then click playlists, and then look for Live with Lou. Okay? We'll be right back.
What I say to that is, boo hoo hoo. You white people are angry because you couldn't use your white privilege card to get invited to the Black Lives Matters All Black Memorial Day celebration. White folks crack me up all of a sudden when we want to have one day.
Girl, shut the hell up. Black Lives Matter is a damn joke, okay? Martin Luther King and Malcolm X and Harriet Tubman will slap the shit out of y'all. Black Lives Matter is a damn joke. Black Lives Matter is a bunch of damn crybabies and a bunch of racist ass people that only care about black people when a damn white cop kill a black, or when a damn white man kill a black, but don't give a damn when a black kill a black. So shut the hell up until you care about when a black kill a black. Bye.
In 1860, the year of the Civil War, in which, by the way, there were, I don't say this in the movie, but there were 4 million slaves in America in 1860. I say no Republican owned a slave. All those slaves, every one of them, was owned by a Democrat. Now, this is like fighting words, right? Number one, I've never heard anyone say that in my life. Number two, it's a factual claim. It's very easily refutable in a scientific sense. All you have to do is give me a list of 5 Republicans who own slaves, and I'd have to take it back. No Democrat, no liberal, no progressive has been able to give a single example. The only example in the entire debate following my movie is somebody said that Ulysses H. Grant inherited on his wife's side a slave. And I pointed out that that was true, but that occurred at the time when Ulysses H. Grant was a Democrat. So the single effort on the basis of one guy to refute my argument falls. So this is what I mean. Facts are very incendiary because everyone is entitled to their own opinion, but you're not entitled to your own facts. And so I try in my movies to make them emotionally powerful, but to have a certain density of facts like this that are out there, irrefutable, and the left can shout and scream, but there it is. There it is.
All right. Lou Benninger here. Thank you for listening. We're at the halfway point, and I just want to say congrats to our guys that graduated from high school that hang out here. Leon and Leon Lampkin graduated, and Matt, who helps Andy, he graduated. So just proud of these guys. And you know what I think is cool is that they're involved in radio still in high school. They were getting it on in their senior year in high school. And I think Matt even was here when he was maybe a junior. So awesome. And maybe Lena, when did you start? When you were a junior, you out here hanging out? Not 1 year. You've been here about 1 year. Just yeah. So anyway, in our trauma intervention program, I am a big advocate on not putting teens on pause. We have teens in TIP that are awesome young people. We don't cut them any slack. We expect them to perform at a very high level, just like we expect adults to. If they don't perform at that level, we let them go because we model the law enforcement and fire departments. If you got to perform at a high level, or you will be asked to leave. And so in our area in trauma intervention, the young people are trained. We don't have any junior TIP people. They're all TIP people. And they're trained the same. We expect the same commitment and level of performance. But I think in our society, I was having a sit down. We were at, by the way, the Cannabis Club, give you a shout out over Juvenile Hall. I was sitting at Juvenile Hall last Monday night. We were talking about, they were asking me, one of the guys was getting out of Juvenile Hall, said, Luke, can you help me find a job? And he said, but I can't get a work permit. And I said, don't worry, I'll get you a job without a work permit. And I just said, work permits, I don't even believe in them. But we have the unions. A lot of people like unions, and particularly guys that are proud to be in a union and make a lot of money. That's great. And I think we should have the right to unionize and be in a union. I don't think the union should control the government or force other people to be in a union. But for those that want to be in a union, love the union, hallelujah to you. But what the unions have done is pressure the legislators to keep young people out of the workforce. So when I was growing up, and I'm going to talk about this later, there was I'm going to talk about an article where the huge drop-off in young people in the labor force. I'm talking about teenagers. And when I was at high school, we all were excited and looking forward to working. And there were lots of jobs, and particularly in the fruit business around here. You can work in the canneries. We had lots of canneries locally at that time, and we could work in the fruit business driving tractor and loading trucks and driving truck. And we would be 16 years of age, and they would be training you how to drive forklift. And I happened to have the opportunity to run an entire loading slab where we were loading out big rigs with bins of fruit and processing the fruit coming in from the field and driving forklift, driving bobtail truck, all at 16 years of age. And today, that's forbidden. You cannot do all that stuff, and you got to be 18 to do some of that. And it's really sad because it's removed the opportunity for young. It's stunted. You ever seen a person that's stunted, a midget? I know that's not the politically correct term, so let me say it one more time. A dwarf or a midget, they're small people. They've been stunted. And so what we've done with our young people is we put them on pause. So then we wonder why they're bored to death sitting around the house all day and become a big pain in the rear, when really they could be out making huge changes in our community and helping out. So that said, I don't even know how I got over there on that deal. But maybe it was just because I wanted to congratulate my two friends here. So I want to talk about the city of Marysville. And I went on the website the other day, and there was no web. All it was a home page and said under construction. That's a bad sign when a city's website is broken. And it reminded me as I looked on it that they put a request for proposals out for up to $30,000 to build that website. And I don't know what I talked about on the radio or in an article, but I threw a fit about it because people I know could build that website for a couple $1,000s for it's very simple website. doesn't have many bells and whistles at all. In fact, it's very kind of inefficient, ineffective website. Maybe that's why they're trying to build a new one. But the fact that government, a government that is broke, Marysville, was offering to spend up to $30,000 shows how out of touch they are. Now, this week, the county administrator, Walter Muncheimer, who took over for Steve Casey, sent in his letter of proposed date of retirement, not resignation. They never call it resignation anymore. They always call it retirement. You know that? Doesn't look good when you say you resigned. So they call it retirement at the end of October. So that's going to that's 3 openings now at the head of the few administrative spots in the city of Marysville. That's the CAO, the administrator, or that's the finance director, and that is the public works director, all open spots at this point. So Muncheimer, when I began to think of his history, here's the things I've thought about. I thought about the $30,000 RFP, request for proposal, for actually my trauma intervention program website, it is much more advanced. If you want to check that out, yubasuttertip.org. That has more bells and whistles on it than the Marysville City website had. So I think of that. Then I think of the Bounce Back program, which was billed as a bounce back. It just gives you the feeling that we're going to economically bounce back, but it was a fiasco. They appointed a bunch of folks that defended it to the teeth from the community. They hired consultants that didn't do any work, and then when they were supposed to turn out, remember that? They were supposed to turn out a product, a report, and they were supposed to present it before the city council. They realized that the folks had not even started working on it. They got the contract, they bid on it, they got the contract, and then never did any work, then turned around and gave it to their friends to do. I mean, talk about unprofessional. So it's just been one thing after another. Now, let's think of some other things. Remember the first time that the city council wanted to put a 1% sales tax increase on the ballot, to increase the sales tax from 7.5% on all your purchases in the city to 8.5%. And the reason they said that was they wanted to do that was because they were broke. They said they couldn't pay police and fire. And if you don't vote for this, they're trying to scare the hell out of particularly the older people in town. We don't know how fast, or if you see somebody, a prowler, or you have a heart attack, we don't know how fast we can get there. So they tried to scare everybody. But really what the problem is that they took on a debt on B Street in Marysville. We call it the B Street boondoggle, where they floated bonds because they didn't have any money, and they went out and speculated on 5 acres of property, and they indebted the city $17 million on property that's worth about $1.5 million. And so they're paying about $650,000 to $680,000 a year payment out of money that they don't have. They don't have that money to pay. And there's no income off that property. It's been barren since they purchased it back in 2006 or 7. It's just been barren land, and they got nobody interested in it. So we're just making payments on it that we should have been paying police and fire and stuff like that, or patching roads. So the first time they tried to put this, or they did put it on the ballot and they tried to pass it, right in the middle of the campaign, Walter Muncheimer went out and bought all new furniture for his offices. Now, only in government, you would never see that in private industry. If you were going broke, you would definitely not go out and buy new stuff. And he not only did that, but he didn't buy it by anybody in Marysville. Now, there's another article, if I get to it today, about the city of Yuba City, and it talked about their major source of funding to run the city of Yuba City, and that's true of any city pretty much. The major source is sales taxes. And so when you run businesses out of town and being harsh to business, then your sales tax revenues drop. So Muncheimer goes out right in the middle of the campaign and buys all new furniture. That vote went against the sales tax increase, they lost. So as soon as they could, they put it back on the ballot. And David Lanza, a developer in the area who owns with his family a lot of property, he came in and funded the campaign because it's against the law for city council members to advocate or campaign for or fund with tax dollars a tax increase or a proposition they put on the ballot. They got to stay clear of it. So they did an end run and got David Lanza to fund the campaign to blitz the community one time after another with mailers, putting the fear that they're not going to have a 911 system if they don't pay for this, that they don't pay this extra 1% tax, right? And so in return, David Lanza got his building, the cargo, what we call the cargo building off B and 10th, included in where dispensaries or marijuana dispensaries are going to be allowed. Now, that's another Muncheimer deal. Muncheimer's also involved in Buck Weckman, who is in charge of the anti-marijuana grow group called FACT. He had on the agenda on June 8th to appeal the method and the process that the dispensaries were landed and came to pass in the city of Marysville. They aren't in business yet, but essentially the city repeatedly violated their own ordinances, violated the Brown Act, and that's all under the work of Walter Muncheimer. The other thing that was under the auspices or oversight of Walter Muncheimer was that David Lehman, his contract is that Muncheimer's contract describes him as overseeing and responsible for the well-being and welfare of the city, under which David Lehman, who is Public Works or Public Services, Community Services Director, he was doing his job. But ultimately, if you're the boss, you're responsible for everybody doing their job. But Dave Lehman, he got tired of complying with state rules as a city services director who enforces the law on all us peons out here. You want to do anything in your house or do anything around town, get permits, have a parade, sell lemonade on the corner, you got to go talk to David Lehman. So it's laws, regulations, ordinances. But he violated some very serious ordinances where for 12 quarters, he did not file any Department of Water Resources reports, and a broke city was then fined $3 million. That's a fantastic amount of money for a city as broke as Marysville is. Their firm, the attorney firm, I'll tell you the name of the attorneys because I want you to know them. Rich, Fewage, Lane, and Bortson. They've been getting about $10,000 a month on retainer to, I think, do a C average job for the city of Marysville. They couldn't handle the negotiations with the state, so then they went out and hired a specialist, and they negotiated the fine down to $288,000. That's still a huge sum of money. Again, that's all under Walter Muncheimer's oversight. Next, when the finance director left, Muncheimer went out and hired a headhunting firm for $25,000. You wonder, well, you might think that's kind of standard. You hire these firms that know where to find good employees, right? But it's interesting because Muncheimer himself was not found that way. He was found when the city of Marysville went to the Human Resources Department of the County of Yuba under Robert Bendorf. He's the county administrator, and they provided their services to the city and went out and solicited county administrators to take over the city and found Mr. Muncheimer. So it only took a couple $1,000s to find Munchheimer, but now he didn't want to work with Bendorf. And I don't know whether there's a whole issue there, but it's kind of a moot point now since Munchheimer's leaving. So on the way to the city council meeting one day, not only were we paying this firm $25,000, but now for Mr. Lehman's position, but now we have this finance director, he quit, and now we have another position. So this headhunting firm said, we're going to make you a deal that you can't refuse. We're not going to charge you $25,000 again for the second person. We're going to give you a good guy discount. It's $22,000. So $47,000 for two instead of $50,000. So you got a little good guy discount. So Stephanie McKenzie, being a novice, thought, gee, that's a lot of money, right? She's still thinking like a taxpayer, unfortunately, instead of a city councilwoman. So she calls Robert Bendorf and says, Robert, is there any other way that we can do this? This is a lot of money. He said, oh, yeah, we could do that for you. It would probably cost you. She said, well, how much would that cost? He said, well, probably just the time we have into it, probably run around $2,000. So when Stephanie McKenzie brought that up at the board, the city council meeting, Munchheimer got a bean up his nose. And he said, well, why didn't you talk to me about it first? She said, well, because, I just found out about it myself, and I was concerned about spending another $22,000. See, this is when you can tell that people are lying to you. These folks lie that they're broke, but they're always spending tens and twenties and $30,000. It's amazing. So they got pushed over to the next council meeting when they voted on it. And the other night, Tuesday night of this past week, they voted on whether or not to hire this firm for another $22,000 to fill the finance spot. And they voted 44-1 against doing that. And at the end of the meeting, Mr. Munchheimer was not a happy camper. And the next day he emailed in his determination that he was done with the city. He'd made all the efforts he could to turn the city around. And what he accomplished was he wasted thousands and thousands and hundreds of thousands of dollars through his lack of performance. And then he raised taxes on us 1%. And he's to take $1.5 million a year out of our pockets for the next 10 years, times 10. That's what he did for you. If you drive around town and say, what did Munchheimer leave his big signature on that improved the city, you can't see much. He would say, well, I got a good tax increase and took more money away from him. That's what I did for you. Now, there's other problems. The city of Marysville has had a amazing reputation for running businesses off. They harass businesses. They harass them over the littlest things. The signage. Well, you need to lock this gate or you need to unlock this gate. I could tell one story after another where petty stuff, they got into a pissing contest over petty stuff and just ran people and fined people over having the wrong size sign. And so all of a sudden now they're just starting to give away money in the name of being friendly to business. So recently there's a business right before you go up over the 10th Street Bridge. It's going to be a car business there. It was a car business. Now it's going to be it again. And they said, hey, we have two parcels and this alley comes into 10th Street right before the bridge. We would like to have that alley. In other words, they didn't say we want to buy the alley. We want to close off the alley. So the city council, instead of selling it, it's one thing. You have three possibilities. No, we don't. We're not gonna close the alley. That's one. Number two is we close the alley during your business time, and when you're off business, we open the alley, right? Number three is we charge you for the alley. Number four is we just give you the alley and you can close it off forever and ever. Amen. Well, to me, what the figure I was given is the alley was worth $28,000 worth of property, and the city's broke. So what does the city council do? Well, we want to be kind to business. So instead of being kind and selling the property at $28,000, they gave it to them. Now the problem is there are codes, there's laws that forbid politicians from making a gift of public funds. Now, those monies that we would have made off that sale, that was your, and if you're a Marysville resident, that was your and my money. That was not 5 city council members' money. So they gave away that property. I'm looking for my notes here to keep track of things. And then, the latest is at the last council meeting, it was time, if you drive over the 10th Street Bridge and look down, you'll notice motocross under there. So the motocross people, they have been renting that for about 5 years. Armstrong Racing out of Gardnerville, Nevada. And they have a contract, and their contract was coming up for renewal. So the guy needed to renew the contract for 5 years, and it's $5,000 a month. And so he comes in and says, will you forgive 6 months worth of rent, or $30,000, because it was a wet year and I couldn't use the course. You know, the water came up and went across that motocross course. You know what the city council did? They said, well, we want to be favorable to business, so they forgave him the rent of $30,000. Now, the problem is, for me, if you look at the contract there, and you look back here on page, on item number 26 or 7, it says this: city's non-liability for loss of business or otherwise. If for any reason beyond the control of the city, such as an earthquake, flood water damage, rain, or other calamity or circumstance, it is necessary to close all or part of the facilities, the city shall not be liable for any loss of business of the concessionaire, that would be the racing company, any costs or profits, or for any other damages. In other words, you're renting flood property. Now, in this contract, which I have in my hands, there is an Exhibit B. And Exhibit B in this contract, this is written by the firm Rich, Fewage, Lane, and Bordson, they had an attorney sitting in the room that night and never even brought this stuff up to inform the council. Now, when I was on a board, the attorney always kept us out of hot water, and when we were getting ready to do something real stupid, they'd say, pause, can I say something? And they would brief us, right? So this, in Exhibit B of this contract, it says winter. I want you to look for the dynamic word here. We've already talked about they knowingly sign a contract that they're putting a racing operation in a flood zone that's going to flood, and if it floods, you still pay the rent. That's what that says, if you guys are listening from Olivehurst. So the complex is open to the public. It says here, the headline is Winter Operation Policy for Off-Highway Vehicle, OHV, Complex in Riverfront Park. So what I'm saying to you is, this is the winter operation policy. Can you hold that thought? It rains in the winter, and sometimes it floods. Now, we've been through a 10-year drought, right? So this guy just went through 5 years. He didn't miss one day. He didn't lose one day with flooding, right? All these years. He didn't, right? But then he finally does at the end. So the OHV complex, there's 2 pages of the winter policy. That means wet policy that this guy signed on to. And he says, it says, during normal winter operations, the follow additional conditions will also be followed. And they list some things. Then they tell them, it says, hey, there's going to be a water release from Lake Oroville. And they set the flow for the Feather River. We don't have anything to do with it. And it's a primary factor in the river level by the complex. And they tell them the river level that begins to inundate the complex is about at 55 feet at the 5th Street river gauge. To establish an accurate marker for evacuating the complex prior to inundation, for you in Olivehurst, that means flooding, inundation, a combination of river level and dam releases shall be used. When the river reaches 50 feet and an outflow from Oroville Dam, it's misspelled here by the attorneys. The outflow from Oroville Dam is expected to increase. The following precautions shall be taken. More right after this. The city council gave away $30,000 as a gift to a private individual. We'll be right back.
People come out, they look at my wife. Well, I hope I hope the kid is aborted because God forbid there's another Trump in the world. I've never seen hatred like this. I mean, to me, they're not even people. I mean, morality's just gone. Morals have flown out the window. We deserve so much better than this as a country. Right. And, it's so sad. You see the Democratic Party, they're imploding. They're imploding. They have no message. You see the head of the DNC, who is a total whack job. There's no leadership there. They have no message. So what do they try and do? They try and obstruct a great man. They try and obstruct his family. They come after us viciously.
Eric,
and it's truly horrible. People come out, they look at my wife. Well, I hope I hope the kid is aborted because God forbid there's another Trump in the world. I mean, the manners, the lack of morals in society is awful. And honestly, I blame most of these politicians. And I blame the media because it's out of control. I mean, the way they act are out of control.
I think your criticism is dead on accurate. I said journalism is dead. It's dead and buried, and it's horrible.
They would rather see him fail than have America succeed. And I've said that a million times, and I really believe it. That's the ugliness of Washington, D.C.
All right. Welcome back. We were talking about the city of Marysville. Seems to be a lack of understanding, a lack of knowledge, a lack of wisdom. Some of my friends like to say that everything rises and falls based upon the quality of the leadership. Could be a family, a little league team, a church, nonprofit organization, business, and cities. And entire countries. You can look at Venezuela for a classic example of a country. Marysville would be a classic example of a city making one bad decision after another, running business out of town, thinking you can raise taxes, sales taxes, and keep businesses that are competing with businesses right outside the jurisdiction where that's a higher sales tax. And you're going to think people are going to come in here to buy stuff. It's crazy. So now, this last week, this contract I have in my hand, which I have read cover to cover, but I don't think the city council did. And it was a contract designed by Rich Fewage, Lane, and Bordson. Brant Bordson was the attorney for the city, the representative from this firm. They're the city attorneys. They're paid just under $10,000 a month for a certain amount of hours a month. And then anything after that, of course, they bill extra. Bordson took upon himself to go up to Butte County and try to argue that a convicted child molester that was a reserve cop for Marysville should be let off without any time. Kind of amazing, don't you think? Being that the guy worked for the city of Marysville, and then he happens to be the city attorney, but he goes up on his own time to argue for leniency, not to argue that the guy didn't do it. The guy did it and was convicted by a jury of his peers. So that's one thing. But I'm wondering, what are we actually getting for $10,000 a month? Because they wrote this document. This document is an agreement that informed over 5 years ago the raceway operators that they were renting. It's pretty obvious that you're renting a flood zone. It's right next to the river. You're pumping water out of the river to knock down the dust at the park. It describes the river as increasing because of Oroville Dam releases, and it sometimes, if it goes above 50 feet at the 5th Street Bridge, it's going to flood your park. And then it describes step-by-step procedures of what they expect to be removed, what the city council expects to be removed from the park, and at what point they want it removed before the water starts to get up close to it. There's a step-by-step procedure. It's called Exhibit B, Winter Operation Policy for Off-Highway Vehicle Complex in Riverfront Park. And it talks about the fact that the government is in charge as a release in that water. It's out of the city's hands, but he has to know that renting that, and he's going to pay the rent. The rent is paid regardless. And it's paid on a quarterly basis in advance. And it talks about the fact that that whole area can be flooded and you're not going to be able to use it, but you're going to have to pay for it. So you take that into consideration on the amount we're negotiating for the rent. For instance, it may, for years and years and years, it may always be available because it never floods. We've been 10 years sometimes without that ever flooding down there. So he signs this document that has Exhibit B, which has a page and a half of descriptions on how to deal with winter usage, which you're going to have to work around the water. And he signed that saying, I got it. I understand it. I'm going to do it. Da-da-da-da-da. And then he signed the same document that says this: the city, if for any reason beyond the control of the city, such as earthquake damage, flood, water damage, rain, hold that thought, or other calamity or circumstance, it is necessary to close all or part of the facilities, the city shall not be liable for any loss of business of the concessionaire, any profits or other damages. So, in spite of this contract, the guy goes in and asks them to forgive a half year's worth of rent, or $30,000, and they go 4-1 with Whitmore has thrown a fit. Dale Whitmore has thrown a fit over this and the giving away of a 1 block worth of street, $28,000 value. Both of them, I don't think anybody on the city council other than Bill Simmons, because I've heard him talking about it, knows what a gift of public funds is. And I think he's learned it by being on the Board of Supervisors at Yuba County for 2 or 3 terms. I can't remember how many, maybe 2 terms. Bill knows this, and it befuddled me that they would give this money away. Particularly when the contract is so explicit and they're broke. They claim they're broke. And so they wanted to spend $22,000 for a second headhunting contract. And fortunately for Stephanie McKenzie stood up. And then they gave away $28,000 one block worth of alley. And then they give away $30,000. It's just like I thought we had all this debt to pay, and they just keep giving away this money. The city is in shambles and is in a free fall at this point, with 3 people now going to be absent. To me, I think it's a great opportunity to not have a full-time administrator, but have a half-time administrator or a 3-day-a-week administrator, and change around the way things are going, and to look to the county for a lot of services that we're paying. Instead of going same old, what I brought up when they wanted to raise taxes, I said, what is going to change in this city? Is anything going to change in this city to not get us back in the same predicament by taking another $1.5 million out of our pockets to make this city run? Are you going to change the way you're doing business? They have not changed one way they're doing business. Now their concept is, I always wrote about the fact that they're unkind to business. Here's what I mean. In the city of Hong Kong, thankfully President Trump gets this because he gets out of the United States often. We have some of the crappiest airports, crappiest cities, lousiest infrastructure in the world compared to modern cities. When you want to, you should just get in an airplane and fly to Hong Kong and get your mind blown, or to Singapore, right? And get your mind really blown, because you're going to see modern cities that are spectacular. Airports, Singapore airport, the airport in Taiwan, Taipei, Taiwan, is unbelievable. Taipei, Taiwan, Singapore, and Hong Kong. They are world class. Or let me back up. The airport in Singapore and Seoul, Korea, and Hong Kong are the top 3 airports in the world. Now, I've not been down to Dubai. Some of my friends have, but I haven't been to that airport. But our airports, even San Francisco, which is not bad, but it does not hold a candle to any of these. And our whole systems are totally falling apart through mismanagement. And the city of Marysville is just an example of horrible, horrible mismanagement. And unless we start to do things differently, and for instance, this last week, Trump had a discussion on it taking for 18 miles of road that one city or county wanted to repair. They have spent 20 years trying to get through all the permits to redo these roads. That is absurd. It's absurd. It's nuts. It's sinful. That's what I talk about. But you talk to county people here and city people. I'm talking about Yuba Sutter counties, and they just go glassy-eyed when you talk about, like for instance in Hong Kong. The reason I started talking about this, in Hong Kong, they claim that if I wanted to start a business there, they can get me the permit process through the permitting process in 24 hours. I want you to just think about that. If you've been in business, can you do anything in 24 hours, get a building permit? Honestly, people, it is so cumbersome. We are so old-fashioned. We are so stuck in the mud. We are so head in the sand around here and so bureaucratic, and we think we're so hot, and we got our heads up our butt. And that's what I mean about harassing business, making it very difficult for business. 25,000 steps to start a business in Yuba, Sutter County, or city of Marysville. And then we nitpick over signs, and we nitpick over this. Somebody puts a sandwich board out on the street, they get cited. They hang up a flag. They put on one of those flag ads on a pole. Anything they do, there's a flooring outlet who was doing really great over in B Street. He moves downtown Marysville. He paints a big flooring outlet deal across his fascia above the awning, and they tell him to take it down. He took it down, and he moved. I think he's operating out of Lincoln, I heard. You know something? You just are doing the stupid. And what are they doing? You know what they're going to say to you? Well, we're following what's in the ordinance. You know, the last the planning meeting, the planning commission worked on a sign ordinance. You know how many pages they told me that sign ordinance is? I haven't read it. They said it was a 20-page sign ordinance. What if we just said, just put up a sign? Put your signs up. Whatever. Would you rather go broke with perfect-looking signs all over town in empty buildings? They hassled the Courthouse Cafe and charged them something like $5,000 for a sign that a previous tenant had hung up there, and it was still hanging up there, and they got into a pissing contest over the sign. Then they told them, after they'd already moved in and got their occupying permit, that they needed to add some other kind of door somewhere, and the tenant got stuck with it instead of the landlord, and cost them a bunch of... I mean, it's just that kind of harassment and baloney, and the fire department didn't even concur with it. It's just that kind of nonsense that drives business people crazy, and city people don't even get it. Like the other day, I was told that Darren Gale made a comment that we talk about. I've been talking about my friend Kumar Kairam, and Darren Gale made the comment that it didn't make any, that it was an exaggeration to say not being able to sell single cans of 16-ounce beer was costing him business. Obviously, Darren doesn't know his butt from a hole in the ground on how to run a business or what causes to lose customers. If you don't have a product or won't deliver a product in a way that a customer wants, and he can go to a competitor 1 or 2 blocks away, you done lost yourself a customer if that's a regular product that he buys. People that come in and buy a single product don't, if they want a particular product from you, they frequently buy more than that one product. Grocery stores philosophically bet on that. That's why they put the one product you need, like the gallon of milk, in the back of the store. My dad was a butcher. I understand the concepts here. So they run you all the way to the back of the store to get your milk and bread, and on the way there and on the way back, they're trying to catch you wherever they can to buy something that catches your fancy, or, oh, I forget, I just remembered I need to get this and this, and then all that stuff jammed around the register. Yeah, you came in for milk, but now you're going to buy this, that, and the other thing. And that's how you make money off customers. You're not ripping them off. You're just getting them to buy stuff that they didn't intend to buy when they came in. Now, for a city administrator to try to critique a guy that's got his life on the line in a liquor store, to me, is the height of arrogance and harassment. It's just an amazing thing. And I think I talked about it last week, the fact that they sent a letter regarding this. The only outlet in town that is forbidden to sell a 16-ounce beer single. Now they're saying, oh, we can resolve this maybe if you'll start the process all over and reapply with the alcohol beverage control and then reapply with us. But we're not really going to guarantee we're going to do anything, but you can start all over. That's the way to resolve this if there is a resolve. More money spent, more time spent, and just getting jacked around when they know that they're being totally discriminatory and partial. And you know something, the city council isn't worth the compost that stacks up out there at Yuba Sutter Disposal. They are spineless, and they have no conscience, and the statement that they're making to business people, you can put up all your Pete's restaurants and your Panera bread you want, but the day-to-day grind of knocking out, trying to make a profit in these cities, you're putting salt in the eye of every one of them, and they know that the city council, if something comes down, the city council does not have their back. Now, in the recent paper with the city of Yuba City, it talks about they okayed a $41 million budget. And Robin, I never know how to say Robin's name, Bertagna. I always want to say Britannia or Britannia. I'll just say Robin. I like what she says. She's more out front than the average finance director. But she says that Yuba City's number one revenue source for the general fund are taxes. They brought in almost $29 million in 2016-17, and she's projecting that they might push up to $30 million in the upcoming fiscal year. That's a lot of money. The city of Marysville has progressively alienated, and the city of Yuba City does the same thing. And so businesses can move outside your jurisdiction and just dip right outside that city line, right out in the county, and get out from under your thumb. But the city council, it's amazing to me, and people that come to me said, oh, we need to be kind to business. Yeah, we don't need to give them money. What you need to do is get off their backs. Eliminate red tape. Keep the city clear of transients. Let's start by like enforcing the law. I was talking to a city council member the other day, and I said, he said, what do you think it's going to do to solve this? I said, enforce the law. Just enforce the law. Enforce the law. And that's not your job as a city council person. That's the police. And it's not even the police officer. The police officers do what they're instructed to do. When they're instructed not to stop transients that are stealing shopping carts, they don't. When they're instructed to just ignore cars that are or campers and stuff and trailers that are parked on the streets in violation of the ordinances, they skip it. People that are sleeping around the streets of Marysville, when they're told by the chief to ignore it, they ignore it. Unless somebody calls. Somebody told me the other day, a business person down at D Street said they're only going to respond when there's a complaint. You know something? That's stupid. That's really stupid. It's interesting because I served there as a chaplain when we had a proactive, problem-solving police force under Mark Siemens and Jack Simpson. And that means that they knew what kind of city they wanted, and they knew that they wanted people here. You didn't have to work, but you had to obey the law, and you couldn't sleep in the city. So they simply enforced that law. You could not sleep in this city. You could not be drunk and under the influence, stoned out of your mind in this city. You could not panhandle in this city. Did people want to panhandle? Absolutely. But the fact is, as soon as somebody put a placard up or was hitting people up at Walgreens or in front of the post office, an officer went down there and hosed them down. Oh, well, that's impossible to stop this. You're nutso. You obviously don't have a clue. It's just like they said, it's impossible to stop illegal immigration. I'll tell you, I'm going to fly to a country next week that they stop. There ain't no fussing around in Vietnam and China. I don't know what they're just, we just don't have any Spaldings. Here's what problems is. I'll tell you what the problem is. No matter whether you want to admit it or not, these cops, these police leaders are politically correct people who think somehow that all these people that don't have a home, just like Andy Vasquez was talking about earlier today, they portray them as victims. And so since they're a victim, then we shouldn't arrest them for doing crimes. That's just the way it is. So they just allow them to build entire camps now off Shanghai Bend in Yuba City. It's just a whole camping operation down there. They were camping again out behind the Marysville Cemetery. If you allow people to take over your city, here's what's going to happen. And the only reason I haven't moved is I'm too old and I got my house paid for, and it's just a hassle for them. But a lot of people are moving, and particularly people with children are not going to expose their kids to people that are loaded. Like I had a guy that was a great guy. When he come out of prison, he was a great guy. He was a great carpenter. But as soon as he got on meth, he pulled his pants down and wanted to flash everybody with his ding-dong. Hold that thought. So that's what we're dealing with in the city of Marysville, and the police don't have a problem with it.
I'm in the wrong business. See, the only reason I want to be president is because I'm black. That would make it too hot for me. I think it could be a black president one day, but you don't want to be the first one. Second or third, that's fine, but that first nigga better watch out. I'm going to tell you that right now. Too hot. I'd be the first black president. I don't think that nobody would really hurt me. I'm sure somebody want to hurt me, but I don't think they touch me because my vice president will be Mexican for a little insurance. You know what I'm saying? You can shoot me if you want, but you're just going to open the border up, so you might as well leave me and Vice President Santiago to our own devices. Ain't that right, Santiago? See? Elian can stay. Don't worry, I don't got no Elian jokes. All I'll say about Elian is thank God he's Cuban. Because if he was Haitian, you'd have never heard about his ass.
All right. Hey, I want to come back to this Yuba City article. Yuba City OK's $41 million budget. And I like this. You need to really look at this article. It's in the paper Thursday, June 8th. It's on the A2, the second page, written by Rachel Rosenbaum. It's a nice article she wrote. And what I like about it is it really tells in a very brief way the coming crash that CalPERS, which is the pension program for all the state and county and city employees that aren't teachers. CalSTRS is the teachers. CalPERS is all the rest of them. So Robin B., I'm going to call her because I don't want to butcher her name. Next time I run into her, I'm going to ask her, how's your name said? Robin B. says, according to Rachel, who wrote this, the retirement system remains the city's biggest challenge moving forward. Now, I want you to hold that thought. This gal is a money cruncher, a numbers cruncher. She says CalPERS is in the way of the city moving forward. And though the city eliminated $1.2 million in expense from the budget by paying off one pension obligation, rate increases are weighing heavily. Now listen to this. You need to really pay attention to this, whatever county or city you're in. In 2016-17, Yuba City's CalPERS costs were about $6.5 million. CalPERS, that's their pension obligation. But the problem is that CalPERS isn't bringing in enough money and getting enough money from its multi-billion dollars in investments to pay for these fantastic pensions they promised government workers. They've overpromised, they being all the entities, city, state, county, all of them have overpromised, agencies. They've overpromised health and retirement benefits, and we cannot sustain it. Now listen to this. These costs of $6.5 million in 2016-17, that's $6.5 million of tax dollars that coming in to fix the roads, sewers, keep the parks up, keep the lights working, paint government buildings, all that kind of stuff, and make improvements, right? $6.5 million is going to take care of people that don't even work anymore. But that number is going to double, and it's going to double to $12.75 million by fiscal year 2023. Now, let me tell you this. It's going to be worse than that even before we get there, because CalPERS, their basis on their projections is that they used to say, we're going to make 7.5% on our investments. And now they're refiguring that and said, no, we're only going to make 7%. So what that means is that counties, cities, all the entities have to kick in more money to cover people that aren't working anymore, right? The problem is that CalPERS has never, did you hear this? The N word, never brought in that much money in a percent, 7.5. You know what last year's was? They didn't even profit 1% from their investments last year. That means that all these agencies, and it affects CalSTRS too, the teachers as well, they are going to have to pay more and more money. What does that mean to you and me? That means that services are going to be drastically cut. Now this is an amazing statement that Robin B., finance director, makes. She says, and I appreciate her transparency. She says the city's revenues simply cannot keep pace with this. That's what she said in an email. I hope more than the city council's reading this and paying attention to this, because she's saying as a finance person, there ain't no way we can do this. We're going to go broke. That's it. You can read between the lines. Let me read the rest of the quote. Therefore, she says, the city will need to look at the manner in which services are provided. I want you to think of the value, what services you think the city provides you. Certainly police and fire, sewage. In Yuba City, it provides water. What other services? I don't know. You think about it. Whatever those, what she's saying is the city's going to need to look at the manner in which services are provided. So how could you, so I want you to think about that. Hold that thought. I'm going to finish the quote and then I'm going to comment on it. She says, he goes on to say the specifics of what this means to our community would be developed through the city council policy direction and input from the community members. Now, this is very, I think that is profound what she wrote right there. Then she goes on to say, actually, Rachel interprets what she says. Rachel says, the writer, health expenses are also on the rise, putting pressure on future budgets, according to Robin B. Now, listen, remember Obama said our health care costs are going to go way down. You remember that? They haven't. They're going way up. Either he didn't know what he's talking about or he lied to you. I'm just going to leave that up to you to sort out. Then she says health premiums continue to pressure Yuba City budgets. You can just fill in whatever city you want. Nevada City, Colusa, Oroville, just fill it in there. They're growing, she says, faster than the rate of inflation. The premiums, the health premiums, are forecast to grow an additional $1.5 million by 2022. So let's go back here and just get back to this part where it says the specifics of what this means to our community. I want you to think about that. The other thing she said, therefore, the city will need to look at the manner in which its services are provided. I want you to think about, we heard from Donna Johnston earlier today about a real different way to vote. And I'll be honest with you, I like it. I vote absentee. It won't affect me. But I like it because it's making it real easy and it's encouraging people to get involved in voting. It's a new way to think of things. I'm not good at thinking new ways. I'm really a rut type thinker. I get involved in doing things a certain way and I just keep doing them and comfortable with them. And sometimes it takes a rock to the side of my head to say, oh, I should have done it that way. That's a lot better way. We're so used to getting city services delivered in a certain fashion. For instance, we have a public works department, a parks department. We have these departments that deliver services to us, take care of our parks. What if we subcontracted every department out? Do you know that there is next week, I'm going to play a clip about a city that was a new city in Fulton County, Georgia. That's the same county Atlanta, Georgia's in. But out in the edges of Fulton County, a new city was started because they didn't like the services from the county, so they started a city. And it's a wonderful story. Again, they started from scratch, and they had two really brainy people. One was a former professor of economics, I think, helped put this idea together. They voted on it. They had over 90% of the population said, we want to do this. I think they have a pretty good sized city. You know how many employees they have? I think they have like 5 employees. That's it. They got fewer employees than the city of Marysville. It's a big city, and everything is brand new. Parks are new, and they have a high-tech police and fire department, and they have hardly any pensions because they have hardly any employees, and they hired an engineering firm to oversee all their public works, all their repairs, all the public works stuff. They just hired it, totally subcontract. They subcontract everything out. You know what's nice about it? I find government people say, well, what if it doesn't work? What if you really get crappy service? I'd say, well, I know what crappy service is like. That's what we have right now. The nice thing about it when you're in the private sector, and like when I get crappy service, I just go to brand X. I go to the next contract. Like I tried to get I went to try to get a seat upholstered. I think I told this a couple weeks ago. And I was recommended to go to a certain guy because I've been out of the car business for many years, over 25 years or so, 30 years, maybe longer than that. So I knew where to get everything fixed once upon a time. But so I went to this upholstery guy, and he said, oh, yeah, he took photo of the seat, ordered the material, going to do all this stuff. And then I called him back twice. He never called me back. So I went to a guy that I knew was good. I'd used him 30 years ago. He's still in business. I went down there. He did the job for me immediately. And it was about 40% less than the other guy was going to do. So in the private sector, there's always somebody that wants to do it better and cheaper. And so hiring the private sector doesn't mean you're stuck on the ABC company forever. That just means you use them. If you like it, you keep them. That would be the supervisor's job to sort that out, or the city manager, county manager. You like them, you keep them. You don't like them, you fire them. You don't renew their contract, right? But I'll tell you, Robin Battagna, or Battagna, however you say it, she is, I appreciate she's speaking transparently in a way to say, listen, somebody better do something different. Otherwise, we're going to beach this craft, is what she's saying. Now, Marysville is on the threshold of that. Yuba County is close to that. In fact, they already talked about recently, several months ago, about floating a 1% sales tax out there to generate more revenue. They can't make these health payments and pension payments like they promised. They need to put new employees on a different plan, but CalPERS is going to fight that and sue them over it because it's a Ponzi scheme. In a Ponzi scheme, which is illegal, but the government uses it all the time. If you and I want to do it, they'll put you in jail. Charles Ponzi tried it. They put him in jail. So they always need new people to pay into the system to pay off the people that now have already paid in it for all these years, but it wasn't enough to carry them because nobody made any money on the investments. So instead of 7.5% return, they're making less than 1%, and they promise big returns. I can't remember. Bernie Madoff. You know, I know somebody, I met her personally, that Bernie Madoff squandered all her inheritance, all her money, all her future retirement. She used to work in Manhattan, and then she worked for Trauma Intervention for several years down in San Diego area. I met her, and she said, I lost every cent of my retirement to Bernie Madoff. Bernie Madoff's scheme was a kind of a Ponzi scheme, and that's exactly what CalPERS is. It's unsustainable. Now, somebody at some point is going to have to say, we're going to do something different, and it's going to be a court action because some of the big dogs in the state don't want to change anything. So just thought I would throw that out there. All right. I wanted to mention, let's see, where are we? Oh, we got plenty of time. Okay, there's a great article that I loved because my dad worked hard. My dad worked 12 hours a day. I thought everybody's dad worked 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. And then he did books on Sunday. We didn't do church, so we mowed the lawn on Sunday usually. That was my job. So I thought everybody's dad worked hard. And that's all my friends' dads worked hard. They all were working somewhere. They were working for one was a priest, one was a Air Force guy, construction, teacher. They worked hard. They were all working hard. And so every one of my friends and I in high school at Marysville, we all loved working. Some of us had jobs during the year. Some of us had jobs on the breaks during the year. And some of us, we were all working full-time in the summer, and we loved it because we wanted to buy a car. And so it's amazing to me that this article said since in 1991, 40% of teenagers that could work, in other words, they were old enough, only 40% of them were working. Now, only 20% are. Is that amazing? When I was in school, we all worked, and we loved it because it was cash in the pocket, man. It was cash, and I loved what I did. I had a great time through my summer, and kind of hated when it was going to end. Some of my friends would fly to Alaska, and they started working on fishing boats up there because they said, "Oh, you can make a lot of money working on those fishing boats." So they probably didn't fly. They probably drove back then because it's too expensive to fly. But let me let you know this. Times are changing. Upper middle class families have made the determination that college admissions, in other words, upper middle class and upper class, have made the determination that college admissions officers devalue paid work. In other words, this is what your colleges are doing for your kids. They don't value people that go out and work hard, like blue collar or just work hard. They devalue it. That means in all of us, that means they take value, it's less value. They devalue paid work, and that if you're not pursuing a hectic schedule of activities, in other words, just going here, going there, doing stuff, you'll be less appealing to colleges. Isn't that amazing? This guy named Ron Lieber wrote a book called The Opposite of Spoiled, Raising Kids Who Are Grounded, Generous, and Smart About Money. The Opposite of Spoiled. And they interviewed him, and he says, so now we have over-programmed children who are all the same. You know something? I learned so much in those years. The first job I had was working for my uncle. Well, first I picked peaches, and we got rained out in the early 60s. We had a huge June or July rain that totally ruined the entire peach industry that year. It rained like it rains in Vietnam. I'll never forget it. And I was just getting my butt kicked picking peaches on ladders by the bin. And so I didn't have anything to do. So my uncle hired me at a planing mill, and where they made cabinets, and I worked just clean up and miscellaneous jobs. And then the next year, I got the job of my life. I worked in the harvesting fruit, and ran a slab where we loaded trucks, and I worked 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, and loved every minute of it, and made some money. Didn't make a lot per hour, but made a lot of money because I worked a lot. And the cool thing is, some of my friends worked in construction. One guy worked at Denny's, Denny's restaurant where Denny's just started back then. We just had these jobs where we could make a lot of money. But the cool thing is what you learned, and what this Lieber says, who wrote this book, Raising Kids Who Are Grounded, Generous, and Smart About Money. He says, I can't tell you the number of times I've heard from 22-year-olds who couldn't understand why their first paycheck after college didn't include their full salary. I mean, people are just stupid today. These people are college graduates. They don't know their butt from a hole in the ground. The decline in teenagers seeking summer jobs has occurred despite the fraction of employers recruiting seasonal employees for the summer rising from 29 to 41%. In other words, employers are recruiting. In other words, there's more and more employers wanting seasonal workers, right? And at the same time, the teenagers say, I don't want that job. I just want to play soccer this summer. I want to play on the... I know I can see this trend right in friends I have who their kids have never worked. They're graduating from high school. They've never had a summer job. They play baseball, they play soccer, they do this, they do that. They may or may not have a clue about how to work, particularly if they've never been trained at home about working around the house. So even though the job opportunities are going up, the number of teenagers getting full-time summer jobs is going down, and down by half. So the other thing that's going on is more Americans are working past year 65. The other day, my half-sister, when somebody said, oh, you got a half-sister? I said, yes, she's half-brother, she's half-sister. So she wrote me on Facebook. She said, are you still working? She said, what are you doing? I said, I'm working. She said, you still working? When are you going to retire? So this says more Americans work past age 65 nowadays than in the past half century. Immigrants take jobs that teenagers would otherwise work. Isn't that something? Teenagers, the parents don't even want their teenagers to go work anymore. They just say, oh, shoot, why don't you go to the gym? You want to go swimming today? Well, why don't you help me over here? Why don't you mow the lawn and then kick around the pool or take a summer class, right? Or go learn how to ride a motorcycle or something. And parents encourage teenagers to do volunteer work or participate extracurricular activities to bolster a college resumes. It's interesting that colleges are not interested in kids that are working at paying jobs. That doesn't look good on a resume. Worked for Lou Benninger, creating problems. That doesn't look good. But if it says, I just attended basketball camp, or I, volunteered for, cleaning up after something, or I picked up garbage, that has more pop than actually performing at a job. Wouldn't have pop to me. I mean, it's okay, but if people never worked, kind of weird. Enrichment courses and classes taken for college credit are also more heavily used by teenagers during the summer. In other words, they take classes to prepare for college. Times are changing. Times are changing for kids. It's interesting where all this is going to end up. So it's fascinating to me because some of my friends own businesses, and they said, Lou, you wouldn't believe it, hiring people. Like they don't have a clue about working. In fact, I run into people all the time, and I said, hey, if you want to work, give me a call. And they really don't call. It's the same thing that they're having, the same problem they're having at places like with working with the homeless. People, I just showed an Adam Carolla clip for Prager University. I showed it in the jail. They loved it. And he was telling how, he said, join the real world and assume you're going to have bad luck. So don't play the lottery, right? Don't gamble on stuff. Just assume you're going to have bad luck. So therefore, prepare real well, over-prepare, and just assume that when your resume lays on the table with the next guy's, if you're about the same, he's going to get it. There may be racism. There may be, people saying, I'm going to pick a woman over a guy or a guy over a woman. Just expect that. But he says, why don't you get yourself so trained, so jacked up, looking good, that they're way more qualified and looking sharp than the other guy. And then you're going to get the job. And so he says, well, some people say to me, well, how'd you get your really big house and how'd you get your car and how'd you get that good looking wife and all that stuff? And he says, Carolla says, hey, had nothing to do with luck. He said, I assume I'm going to have a certain amount of bad luck, if you want to do the luck world. But he said, I gained all those things on my own. That was what I did. But just assume you're going to have adversity. What he's saying is that the world is difficult at times, and there's adversity. But he said, prepare for it. And he says, what I've accomplished, and I think Andy Vasquez said the same thing earlier today. He said, the reason I have a house and a car and food on the table is because I'm working really hard at it. All right? I'm working really hard at it. I'm keeping at it. I'm not getting loaded at night. I'm not getting addicted. I'm trying to eat right so I'm not sick and miss a lot of work, right? And there's reasons why certain people are gaining wealth and other people aren't. fact, I wrote an article about it, I think in last week's Territorial. Some really pharisaical Christian, I quoted this passage about wealth, and he said, well, you didn't use the King James Version, so you got the wrong, you didn't quote it right. I thought, oh yeah, that's the version Jesus spoke, got King James. But, you know, in one translation, this passage out of Proverbs says that wealth is gained little by little. In other words, built into that saying, if you look at the context in Proverbs, in fact, if you read the 31 chapters of Proverbs, you can read one a day, you'll learn some real great values on how to, like, live a stable, productive life, whether life kicks a lung out of you occasionally or not. You just keep on ticking. If you have the right values and some tragedy hits you, you'll end up coming back and getting back on top of things because you have the right value system and you know what's going on. Well, we're at the end of our time today, and Bob Day is actually here today, and he's got something up his sleeve he's going to talk about. He's going to stir it up over here. He's not going to do a rerun because he's here in flesh and blood, as they say. So we'll see you next week, and I hope you do something really incredible, and have a good one.